Mistakes. We all make them, and we'd all like to avoid them. Today we're going to talk about 9 mistakes that we all make on episode 98 of the Remarkable Leadership Podcast. Are you ready? Let's go.
Welcome to the Remarkable Leadership Podcast. We're here each week to talk about leadership, teamwork, organizational culture, and human potential with experts from every walk of life. Our goal is to help you become the remarkable leader and human being you were born to be. Your host is Kevin Eikenberry, a leadership thought leader, best-selling author, coach, trainer, and consultant to leaders for nearly 25 years. This episode is sponsored by Kevin's upcoming book, The Long Distance Leader, Rules for Remarkable Remote Leadership. Order your copy today at remarkablepodcast.com/book. Welcome to the Remarkable Leadership Podcast.
Welcome, everybody, to the 98th episode of the Remarkable Leadership Podcast, man, or at least the 98th episode of the conversational part of the Remarkable Leadership Podcast, and I'm excited to have our guest today. I'm talking to him. Well, I'll say more about that in a second. Our guest today is Skip Prichard. Let me tell you about Skip. He is an accomplished CEO, growth-oriented business leader, and keynote speaker. He is known for his track record of successfully repositioning companies and dramatically improving results while improving the corporate culture. That's a pretty good combination, everybody. He's a keynote speaker on topics ranging from leadership, personal development, growth strategies, culture, corporate turnarounds, and the future of publishing. His views have been featured in print and broadcast media, including the BBC, the New York Times, CNN, NPR, The Daily Beast, Harvard Business Review, Information Today, The Bookseller, Publishers Weekly, and the Library Journal. And that, everybody, is the bio that he gave me. But he left out the most important part. The day after he and I are talking, it's just a while before you're going to hear this, but tomorrow, as we talk, this book, The Book of Mistakes, comes out into the world. He's written a popular blog for a long time. I've followed him for a long time. He tells me he's done the same of me. He's just being nice. His name is Skip Prichard. Welcome, Skip.
Thank you. No, I'm not just being nice. And I didn't write that bio, but if I did, I would have included your podcast in that long.
Now you can't. See, now you have to update it because now
right.
It includes the podcast. And you do need to have it changed because this is the book. And if you all happen to be watching, really, if you don't know that you can actually now watch the podcast, you can't do it for all the past episodes. But now you should be able to watch this. Go to the website, remarkablepodcast.com. But here it is, the book. I'm showing it to you all. And it is called The Book of Mistakes, 9 Secrets to Creating a Successful Future. So, Skip, let's start right there. So I was thinking about this as I was carrying this book into a meeting. I had some time before the meeting. I was reading it, and I thought, I should just have a journal that says this because that's probably every journal I've got is really just a book of mistakes. But tell us about the backstory. And in fact, before we started, you said this isn't the book you thought you'd write first, but what's the backstory? Tell us a little bit about this book and why you wrote it.
Well, I wrote the book because I've really been studying success and failure for my whole life. I have followed you for years, and it's great to talk to you in person because we share similar interests in topics and leadership and success and personal development. But I started studying it when I was a kid, really. We had this strange
Me too.
opportunity. Yeah. And we would take these people into our home. My parents opened our home. We had all kinds of people, all races and nationalities and all walks of life, but they were all troubled. That was the commonality. And I would study them because one person would leave and some stayed a day, some stayed years. And somebody would leave, get a job, go to school, be successful. Somebody else would not get off of drugs, be stuck kind of circulating back. And I wondered, what is the difference between this one person who's doing well and this person who's struggling? And that started my early passion for personal development and success. And so I've studied it kind of my whole life. And this is a story that was written with the distillation of these 9 principles all the way back from my childhood I've been the CEO of several global companies. I've interviewed over 1,000 very successful people, and I distilled these principles into this book. But I wrote it as a story, and kind of like Jessica Seinfeld, Jerry Seinfeld's wife, she writes these cookbooks, which are for kids, right? So that you could sneak zucchini into the chocolate chip cookies. And
which I'm sorry, I'm going to go on the record and say that's just wrong. But anyway, it's just wrong. But anyway, it's probably right, but that says something about Kevin. But
I think I would detect that zucchini. But it's so interesting, to write a story that's enjoyable, that's entertaining, that you want to read, but slip in the vegetables, slip in the leadership principles, slip in the success principles. And that's what the backstory is, that I wanted to design something that was fun to read, but you would read and you would get your personal development nutrients, if you will.
Vegetables. So there's some vitamins in here, and I've read, as I know you have, I was going to say hundreds, that it's probably a little bit over to the top, but not by much, of what I would call the business parable. That's what this is. It's a story. It's actually a couple of stories intertwined, which I really like. And among those, I have a love-hate, I'm just gonna be honest, I have a love-hate relationship with them because I know how valuable they can be. And when you've read as many as I've read, at some point it's like, okay, right? Like there's only so many ways you can trigger the story. But now I say all that because I think that this one's excellent. I mean, first of all, the lessons are phenomenal. We're going to talk about those, but I really like the way you went about it. There is only kind of so many ways to peel that onion, I think.
Sure.
But you've done a really nice job. And I really was again, I've read lots of them and I like lots of them. I know a number of authors that have written multiple of them. And yet I think you did a great job. And so I was really excited to have the chance to chat with you about the book. And again, everybody, that's the Book of Mistakes is what it's called. Now, for you listening, in episode 77, we had Aaron Walker on, and Skip, you might know Aaron, I don't know, because he knows Michael Hyatt really well. But anyway, he said, I don't make mistakes. I learn. And I think his idea really fits with this book because that's really what you're talking about. Hey, if I can identify the mistake, then I can make sure I don't repeat it. Right? Repeat it. So what I decided we would do today, Skip, and for all of you listening, watching, you don't know that this is what I'm going to do. We've got 9, and we don't have time to dive deeply into all 9. And you wisely say early in the book that, I could just give you the 9, but it wouldn't be very powerful, right? And so I'm not even going to ask you to share all 9. What I'm going to do is we're going to dive into a couple of them and talk there if you're okay with that.
I'm okay. And I will say something else, because you mentioned it, and I, of course, receive so many books, and I try to read one book minimum per day. That's because I don't sleep. And I read a lot of these books, and I have mixed reactions myself. A lot of them are written pretty poorly. My aspiration was to not write one poorly. I don't know who would set out to write one poorly, but some are extraordinary, and they're my go-to. I love them, and I love getting wrapped up in the story. And others, I think it's hard. I think it's hard because you're really combining your writing fiction and nonfiction together. And
exactly.
It's just difficult to take on, and it's ambitious. And I hope that I achieve that. And I thank you for your compliments, but it is to be seen as it gets released tomorrow.
Well, exactly. And of course, by the time you're all hearing this, if you hear it even when we first release it, the magic of the podcast is we don't know when you're going to hear it. And that's really great. So by the time you hear this may be a massive bestseller. And I certainly hope for Skip and for all the readers' purposes that will be true. But here's the thing. I'm thinking of another person we had on the podcast, and there's probably more than one, but I'm thinking of one other, and that's Howard Behar, who's one of the early guys at Starbucks. And I can't think of the name of the book, but one of the books that he wrote is a parable also quite excellent. So I would encourage you, everyone, to go back and find the Howard Behar episode as well. But we're talking about the Book of Mistakes, and there are 9 that are woven through the book. And one of those is number 7. That's one of my thought we'd talk about today. Number 7, number 7 is the mistake is blending in instead of standing out. Well, I picked that because I think it's challenging for a lot of people. So I'm just going to let you talk. Talk to us about mistake number 7 for a little bit. Blending in instead of standing out.
Blending in instead of standing out is such an important success and leadership principle, because we are so wired, early peer pressure from being in grade school, high school, college, early career is blend in. You don't want to stand out. Do what everyone else is doing, be where they are, hang out, use the language they use, watch what they watch, dress the way they do, etc. And then we wonder, why are we mediocre? Why do we end up in a mediocre place? What's this mediocre? What's average, right? Well, it's because we've blended in. That's basically what we're asking for. The question is, where do you want to go? Do you want to be mediocre and average? If so, that's great. Blend in. And don't read this book because it's not for you. It's just not. And stop listening to Kevin's podcast too, because it's not for mediocre people. It's for people of excellence. That's the difference between blending in and standing out. I think when you think about, I've been the CEO of many companies. If you're the leader of a company or if you're a manager of a team, who do you pick for the next promotion? The person who's blending in with everyone else? No, you don't even notice that person, right? You notice the people who stand out. I think of this even from business's perspective. I was at a honey festival of all places. It was called the Lithopolis Honey Festival in Ohio, Lithopolis, Ohio. And I thought,
say that three times fast, just saying.
So it's true. What can be different at a honey festival? And when I went there, all of a sudden, I was struck by the way businesses managed to this principle and stood out. Somebody had a bee beard. Somebody had this princess hat of bees. Boy, that stood out. Someone else had taken the honey and infused it with herbs in a medicinal way to cure ailments. Somebody else had honey rubs, etc. The point was, all of these people took honey and used it in a different way to stand out. And it struck me, standing out is so important. We pick people who stand out. Now, I often think people think standing out, you can stand out and be really bizarre and off kind of over
like
here.
I'm going to wear, purple shoes every day or something like that, right?
Right. People who tattoo their face and all the way down, right? Maybe I'm trying to stand out, and they may stand out, and for what they're doing, it may work perfectly for them. I'm not judging that. The point is, everybody has different ways to stand out or blend in. And leaders are people who stand out because that's the ones who are picked. Those are the businesses you stop when they stand out. Their sign maybe stands out. It may be that they stand out because of excellent service, right? Zappos is an example. It may be that they stand out because of excellent ingredients in their food, right? Zingerman's in Michigan is an example. So if you think about standing out, the way I put it in the book is standing out is as simple as consistently exceeding expectations. That's really it.
Which immediately gets you above average, which certainly makes you different right off the bat because you're, by definition, exceeding expectations. So the reason that I picked this one, I would say, Skip, that everyone listening would agree with everything you just said. And there's a whole lot of people out there that are saying, yeah, but I was taught, you don't want to be a show off. I was taught that you don't want to come off as arrogant. I was taught, or I believe, right? And I'm not judging any of those teachings either, but I'm really curious for us to, because everything you said is right. And I think everyone would sort of agree with it. And yet let's talk about that extreme, or let's talk about how do you coach people who are sort of in that spot of like, I agree with you, but I don't, and I want to be seen differently. And yet, I don't want to be a show off. I don't want to look, you follow my point. So let's talk about that, because I think that's the trap where a lot of people get stuck as it relates to this idea.
I think it can. And I think it's having that skill of standing out with excellence that can be different. It's as simple as meeting. Think about having a great meeting, leading a great meeting. How can you stand out in doing that? Whether it's exceptionally done minutes of the meeting or actions that are required, or walking in and holding a meeting and thinking, what is the purpose of this meeting and the process we're going to go through, and what are we looking for after? Purpose, process, payoff are three things that I talk about in meeting planning. There's lots of different ways. You don't have to be a show off or an egotistical spotlight hogging person. In fact, that's the kind of standing out that we tend to to say this is not good. What we're talking about is standing out with excellence. Think about a great play that you go to, right? If somebody's at an improv and they're hogging the spotlight and it's stuck on them, that's not seen as a good performance.
Exactly.
If there's this incredible back and forth and you're swept away by somebody's performance, it's because they're moving with the crowd and doing the right things, but they're pulling them forward, right? Leaders will pull people forward by standing out in a positive way. So there's lots of different ways to stand out without violating that principle and going too far where, you know, you're standing out consistently, but you're standing out in a negative way. You can stand out positively or negatively, and you don't want to stand out on this side. You want to stand out on that side.
One of the reasons I picked this particular one for us to talk about is to have this kind of rich conversation, because if, you know, there's sort of the marketing side of this is I'm going to wear purple tennis shoes every time I give a speech. I'm making that up, right? Or there's
your purple tennis shoes.
I don't own purple tennis shoes, right? But I don't even know where that came from. But it also could be signing every email, "You are remarkable," which I've done for 10 years. And someone else might think that's equally weird. Now, there's the marketing side of trying to stand out and being unique. That's the better sign. That's the beard, you know, that's the bee beard and all that stuff. But I think as a leader, we are also called to serve those that we lead. And so I think part of us standing out in that way is that we, you know, sometimes people know, they don't even know what we're doing, but it's working because our team is humming along. And the meetings that we don't even know why Skip's meetings are awesome, but every time I go to a meeting with Skip, we get stuff done. And I don't know what he did, but it's the consistent thing here is Skip, right? You're standing out, even if I don't know what you did. And even if you're not hogging the spotlight and all of that other stuff. So I really love that you sort of in this conversation, it's in the book too, talk about this. It's standing out with excellence and standing out in that way, not in a, oh, well, look at me showing off, right?
So true. And I'll just add another example of that because it's something that I've adapted and adopted from Doug Conant, the former CEO of Campbell Soup.
Yep.
He wrote, as the leader of Campbell Soup, thousands of personal handwritten thank you notes that he would send out to employees. And I haven't written thousands, but I try to write some every week. And it's something like that makes you stand out. As a leader, you're not looking for the spotlight. You're not highlighting yourself. In fact, you're supporting other people. And I had somebody say, well, when I have your job and I'm the CEO, I think I'll do that. No, right?
Too late. So I got two things.
If you want to get to that point, you better start writing them now.
Two things. One is Doug was on this podcast, episode number 25, Touch Points for Leaders. So you want to go back and listen to that when you want to listen to Doug's Conant, really smart guy. The other thing is the podcast I just recorded, which will come out the week before you, Skip, is with Gary Brackett, entrepreneur, former member, starting linebacker for the Indianapolis Colts. And we had this exact same conversation. He says, I'm working with one of my assistant managers in one of my restaurants, and they say, how do I become the manager? He says, start being a manager today. Start being a store manager today. And when then I'll know you're ready. Don't tell me, you give me the manager job, then I'll, don't hand me the ball, coach. Now I'll do it.
That's
so
right.
You're right on. You're right on. Right on.
I'm glad I'm in agreement with him because I wouldn't want to be on the other side.
Yeah, there you go. But I love that, we can hook these things together with other things. And so if you're listening and that's helpful to listen to others, that'd be great. So blending in.
For the record, Kevin, you knew right off the top of your head. How did you know right off the top of your head what number it was? That's remarkable.
Well, I didn't. I looked it up while you were talking. I multitask, which I tell people they shouldn't do, but I knew Doug was on, but I wanted to give people the number. So I had prepared for Aaron's number 77, but not for Doug's because I didn't know we were going to talk about it. So I want to talk about another one of the mistakes, if we may. And so let me just close the loop on number 7. The mistake is blending in instead of standing out. Mistake number 4 is surrounding yourself with the wrong people. Let's talk about that one.
Well, surrounding yourself with the wrong people is so important because your friends determine your fate, I say, and who you are around determines where you go. Jim Rohn was famous for saying that you're the average of the 5 people that you hang around with the most. And I find that to be incredibly true. There's research that shows that our friends, our colleagues influence us to an incredible degree. In fact, there was one study I was reading that said, before the age of social media, when we were bombarded with pictures, if two people are apart in separate cities and one is gaining weight and the other one doesn't even know about the person's weight, chances are their best friend is also gaining weight. It is extraordinary. And so what I say in the book is, wouldn't it be better to gain wealth together instead of weight together? And we can work on these things together. Our friends have this enormous impact. Who we're around. And so often we wonder, wow, I'm feeling kind of down and depressed, and I'm not feeling like I'm my energetic self. And then we do an inventory of the people who've been around us, and we go, wow, well, they're naysayers, critics, whiners, complainers, and they're bringing me down. Why am I surprised? So how do I deliberately,
Shocking, right?
Right, shocking. How do I deliberately surround myself with people who are going to lift me up, who are going to inspire, who are going to encourage, who are going to make me better?
Coach me, mentor me, hold me accountable, help me learn, etc. So here, everybody, I'm looking at the back cover of this book in terms of some of the people that wrote in the business. We would call them a blurb for the book. Michael Hyatt, Ken Blanchard, Stephen M.R. Covey, Tim Sanders, John Gordon, Mark Sanborn, Bob Berg. Now, if you listen to this podcast, you recognize pretty much all of those names. Now, as it turns out, 1, 2, 3, 4 of those people have been on this podcast, and I've talked with another of those as well. But the point is this, that when Skip's not making this mistake is what I'm telling you all, right? Those folks don't pick up the phone or answer the email if he's not surrounded himself with those people or people in his orbit that are in their orbit. And so you're living it is what I'm saying. And I think that's a great example for us all.
Well, thanks, Kevin. It's also so interesting because I've had some people say the same thing we were talking about, and I've had some people say the same thing. Well, if I had the people and the friends that you have, right? So sure, you have best-selling authors and you had dinner at the Supreme Court. You went to Prince's house before he passed and partied with the stars. You know what? Yes, that's true, but I didn't start there. But here's where I started. I surrounded myself with all of those people years and years ago. Where? At the library.
At the library, on tape.
I couldn't even afford it. Yeah, cassette. Remember cassette tape?
I do. I got a whole bunch of them.
Right. So Zig Ziglar and Jim Rohn and Earl Nightingale. And I started surrounding myself with people that were going to inspire me. So if you take a look at your podcast, you're literally letting people surround themselves with these people. Maybe they don't know them, but you're letting them in, and that will have an effect. So it's not just the people you're working with. You can't really just get rid of your coworkers as easily or your family. I'm not recommending that.
Well, but you can now. I mean, we're not talking about your spouse, right? But
that's
or
right.
Your children.
That's what I meant.
But even with other parts of your family, you can manage the ways in which you interact with them if you really feel that they're having a negative impact, right, on you.
And you need to.
And you need to. And I say that with love, and I say that without judgment. But you can make the observation, say, listen, when I'm around that person, I'm upset, I'm anxious, I feel more negative about myself. Well, then, why don't you just keep it to Thanksgiving and Christmas? And don't, read every one of their Facebook posts and all, whatever else that might be, right?
If they take you to a bad place, why are you putting yourself there? And just remove yourself. I think there's a double challenge there. I both do one thing where I'm trying to remove some of those people, reduce their impact, but I also study the impact they have on me. And I think, why did you trigger this? What was it? And can I learn? Because there's nothing more empowering then if I can learn to take someone who has a negative impact on me and puts me someplace, and over time separate myself, like we just said, but learn enough to come back, and when they do that, instead meet them where they are and kind of help them or move them somewhere instead of taking that on myself. That's very difficult to do, but once you master that, oh, it's so rewarding.
Well, and here's the thing. It doesn't even have to be about it, but here's the thing. the way you just described it is exactly right. And so what does that mean? That means that you're part of it, right? They're an impetus for it. It's your response that you have complete control over, right? So there are people that, they don't impact me the way they did. Their behavior hasn't changed. I've chosen to not take it on. I've chosen to, just to not engage in those ways. I've chosen to change the topic. I've changed different things. And just to recognize that about myself, I'm in every one of those conversations, and I have a chance to deal with them in that regard.
It's so true. You're going to respond or react, as Zig Ziglar would say in the
Great
day.
Story. Great story. Yeah.
And that's so often what we have to do. Can we respond to things and be positive? Now, some people have told me, I actually lose control. I have no ability to control when this person comes in. I have this response. And the first thing I say is, then back out, right? Don't deal with it. Don't try to learn from it. Back out of that till you can mature, learn, develop enough to respond.
Right.
But we can control 90% of the information. If TV's making you stressed and you're watching the news,
Go watch it.
My wife and I go, you know what? We're not going to do this. And we turn the channel, and that channel is in your control, and watch something uplifting.
Yeah. Or turn it off and pick up a book.
Off.
Well, and I'm not picking on TV, but the point is, exactly right. Everybody, we could probably have Skip on every week. I think we could have a good time doing that, but we're going to move on. So before we move on to the next part of the program, as they say, real quick, I want to let everybody know about my new book that's just around the corner as this comes out for everybody. The Long Distance Leader, Rules for Remarkable Remote Leadership, coming out June the 5th. And so here's your chance. You can go to remoteleadershipinstitute.com/pre-order. Pre-order the book, get some special bonuses. And don't worry, if you're listening to this after, the book's all out, that link will still work, still give you the bonuses, etc. So with that, next thing for us, Skip, is I have what I'm now starting to call the fast break. I've got 3 ideas, and I'm going to share those with you fast break style. And I'm going to say them. I just want you to respond with the first things that come to your mind. It doesn't just have to be a word or two. It's not a Rorschach test. But what are your thoughts about those ideas? Are you ready?
I'm ready. Number
1 is accountability.
It's everything. Accountability, personal accountability. In fact, in my company, it's the second principle I talk about, accountability. If you don't have accountability, it's the foundation for everything. All success is not blaming other people and saying it's up to me, right? If it is to be, it is up to me. That personal accountability means the world.
And by the way, if you're taking notes, everybody, that's what we were just talking about before we made that shift. We're talking about our accountability in terms of who we interact with and how we respond to when we interact with them. Second word or idea on the list for you, Skip, is communicating with stories.
Communicating with stories. That's why I wrote this book in a story format. Jennifer Aker of Stanford University says that we remember stories 22 times more than we do if it's facts and figures. Paul J. Zak of the Center for Neuroscience says that storytelling actually increases oxytocin in your brain, which helps you empathize. And when you're empathizing, you're going to learn. There's so many reasons why. I mean, if you go thousands and thousands of years, storytellers matter. What's the story? If you watch Shark Tank, have you ever watched Shark Tank?
Yes, and I'm sure everyone here has.
Right? What's the investment that usually wins? The
best story.
The person with the best story, best personal story, best positioning. That storytelling is an incredible way and it goes back to what we started with. It will help you stand out. Learn to be a great storyteller.
Last one, the word is time.
Time. It's mistake number 9 is thinking you have all the time in the world.
I know. I was giving you a softball.
It's so important for us to remember that time is much more important than money. It's the resource that equalizes all of us, and that we have the opportunity in this particular day to make a difference, to learn, to inspire, to encourage, to take it all in. Can't worry about tomorrow. Can't worry about yesterday. Can't worry about what happened and dwell on things in the past. That's just dragging yesterday. Can't be stressed about tomorrow. What are you thinking about today? And time and how you manage that day, this day, right now, can change the course of your future. And you can't worry about anything else but the time that you have right now.
All right. So, Skip, you're running a company, you're writing a book, you've got all the stuff that you've got going on in your life. You're a busy guy. We've all got the same amount of time, I realize. But what's something that you do for fun?
For fun, I read a tremendous amount. I read, like I said, at least a book a day. I write, I speak, I sing, and we travel a lot. I love to travel, watch a lot of sports games in person, love to go to the gym and work out, love great speakers, love to go to a great conference and take it all in. I love to study other people. And I love to sit on a park bench in a city and just people watch and study and meet all kinds of people, because I'm a believer that we can learn from every single person that interacts with us and crosses our path.
So I think I read somewhere that some of those games that you go to are Ohio State games.
You think? We're here in Columbus.
I know. Well, you know that I'm a Boilermaker, so we're just going to have to agree to disagree on that one. Although I will always root for you against those boys that wear the maize and the blue, just so you know.
I used to live in Ann Arbor too, and so it's a real stress.
Well, I grew up in Michigan. But I said a while back before we played U of M in a basketball game, I said, listen, I grew up in Michigan. I plan to live there again. I'm proud to be from Michigan, but don't ask me to root for the boys in the maize and the blue. And so all of you listening, if you're a maize and blue fan, it's a great university. I just don't like your sports teams. So.
Oh, that hurts a lot of people.
I'm sure. And so with those of you who are still left on this podcast, we will continue on. You talked about reading a lot. I know that one year I think it was for Christmas, your wife got you additional bookshelves in your furnace room. So we know that you have a lot of books and you love to read. What's something you've read recently, Skip, that people might find useful?
Well, I do read all the time, and I feature those books on skipprichard.com often. Yep. The Type R was a book I just read on resilience by the Marstons, which I thought was fantastic. I have books coming in all the time, and tonight's book is Inc. Start a Successful Business. So I'm looking forward to that. Prediction Machines is the economics of artificial intelligence. And I just read not too long ago my friend Mark Sanborn's book, The Potential Principle, which I thought was outstanding. In fact, I have it right here. It was good. And I also just read James Drock's book, Serve to Lead, which has been out for a while, but I hadn't read it. And he has a new book coming out about it. And I also read Ken Blanchard's book that he just put together that's not out yet. It's a compilation. I can't remember the name. It's
about servant leadership. Yep. It's coming soon. It'll be out by the time.
It'll be out. Okay. It's a compilation of a number of people, and I know friends of mine actually, and servant leadership is a topic that I write about frequently. So I found that to be very good reading.
So I'm a Marston from Type R was episode number 90, everybody. And yes, I'm looking at it as we're talking. And Mark Sanborn talking about the potential principle was, I'm not finding it quickly. There it is, episode number 67. You can find Mark, you can find Amma as well. So I guess we're in agreement. Maybe we both don't need to be here, Skip. Maybe I should just let you do this and I don't need to be here at all.
I'm going to reverse this though. You have a book coming out. So, you know, we're going to be,
I'm ready.
We're going to be talking about it.
I'm ready. So last question for you, and the one that you probably care the most about really is, where can people learn more about you and your work and the book?
skipprichard.com. There's no T in Prichard. And thebookofmistakes.com. Actually, thebookofmistakes.com is a site that talks about the book. I have a book trailer. I just put up a quiz tab there where you can take the quiz and see which character from the book you are. So Kevin will have to learn which character you are. That just went up this morning.
All right, awesome.
And so all those types of things are going up. But we're excited about it. It's getting great early reviews on Goodreads, and tomorrow's the day. So by the time people hear this, it will be out and in bookstores and airports all over the country and the world.
The book is called The Book of Mistakes, 9 Secrets to Creating a Successful Future, bookofmistakes.com, skipprichard.com. And now a question for all of you who are listening, and that is the one I ask every single week, which is, now what? What are you going to take from this? What did you hear Skip say that struck you? What action will you take as a result? Did you learn something in terms of thinking about the people that you spend the most time with? Do you recognize a mistake that maybe you are making or have made? Are there parts in your life where you're blending in when maybe you need to try to stand out? I've just picked out a few of the things that we've talked about. My hope is, and I believe Skip's would be as well, that our goal here was not just to sort of entertain you and entertain ourselves, but rather to enlighten you in ways to help you determine and find what you could take of value from this for yourself. So listen, if you've enjoyed this, we're here every week, and you can come back every week, but you can also be more engaged and more a part of this process by joining us on our Facebook group. And you can do that by going to remarkablepodcast.com/Facebook. Skip, been a pleasure to have you. I've been looking forward to it ever since we scheduled you. So thanks so much for being here.
Thank you. It's great to talk to you after following you for years. You seem like you know somebody through listening and reading, and it'd be great to see you in person one day.
We'll make that. We're not that far apart. We'll have to make that happen.
That's right.
Everybody, thanks again to you, Skip. Thanks to all of you for listening. We'll be back next week. Another episode of the Remarkable Leadership Podcast. Thanks, everybody.